So I recently saw this clip of Josh Hawley on Tucker Carlson, and he has some good points, about discussing, what how men need to, stop their addictions to certain things, and um, then they need to, get married and have families, which is all well and good. Like this kind of discussion is all well and good, but the way he describes it is as though like it's like 20 years ago that oh don't use a dating app, just go walk up to a random woman, and as a father to two young children and kind of observing how the world is going, two young boys specifically. So I'm gonna have sons that are gonna grow up in this world, being observant of how things going and how the trends are going. um, I see that this just is bunk advice for most young men, especially like in from what I hear of from what I see online of people talking about like modern dating or whatever. Um, I'm lucky that I was able to escape that trap or whatever, in college. But the perspective that they have that you just if you conservative hard enough, and if you go and you cold approach a woman and talk to her as a man, immediately you're gonna have her fall in love with you, and you're gonna have uh, just get married and all this kind of stuff. It's sort of a romantic view of like the past of how things would work, but in modern day, you would just get a sexual harassment charge or something like that if you tried to cold approach a woman and try to talk to her. It's just not the same as it was before. Like you have to be strategic in the way that men approach this. And I see that these kind of stories pop up all the time in the news, where some guy, one guy, he was just trying to talk to the girl, and he accidentally like he decided he just out of without thinking he touched her hand, and then she got the school to file sexual harassment against him or whatever, and he got basically kicked out of the school. So, with that kind of perspective, just saying, "Hey, go talk to a woman, go get married, have kids." It's not easy for these young men, and what they don't understand is that they have to compete especially in the way that the modern era is. They're having to compete with some men who have like years of experience, who are older, who have basically they missed their ship, like they missed their boat whenever it was like meeting women in their time, and so now that they have money and experience and all this kind of stuff, now they're going back and they're trying to date younger women or whatever, and they're trying to get women who are um like in another almost generation sometimes. So it's I don't know, weird, but that's what you're having to compete against. You're having to compete against this. You're having to compete against these guys who are crazy, um, like muscular monsters or whatever that are always working out. Like that's all they do. They work out and they get maybe some of them get paid to work out and try out and work out products or whatever. There's all kinds of different stuff going on now that men have to compete. You basically, if you want to compete, and a lot of the dating apps have proved this, during their studies, that the most women on dating apps will only go after the top 20% of men, and even then, I think that there's even a smaller number. Like there's certain like 10% that are universally that women uh, will pursue. But this is sort of the modern issue, and the way that a lot of these conservatives talk about it. If you conservative hard enough, it goes back just to the work hard enough like mindset. The whole conservative mindset needs to just be broken, ripped apart, and shattered into the wind. Like you don't live in the 1950s anymore, as much as you would like to. As much as some of those things would be good to come back, like some of those things, having traditional families and all this kind of stuff would be good to have again. Like getting rid of a lot of the craziness in society, all of that would be great. But we don't live in that world currently. and you can't operate high trust in a such a low trust society. You can't operate like you have this high trust that you can walk up to. Like men can't have the trust that they can walk up to a woman, not feel like they're going to get a harassment charge, and be able to be confident and talk to her, and know that she hasn't been around the block 18 times and seen. Oh well, you're not as good as like the last 15 guys that I've been with or whatever. You're hideous compared to them or whatever. That's sort of the gist of the problem. And until you address more of the root causes of these issues, instead of trying to say, well, yeah, men just do it. Men have to like bear the brunt of all this responsibility, and of course, men do need to be able to step up and do what they can. But just saying, hey, go get married, have a family, and this isn't as good as what the sort of the manosphere is trying to teach men. It's teaching men, hey, if you want to be there, and people, Andrew Tate is probably the most like popular figure right now from sort of the manosphere type, and he says, "Oh, you need to be a top G or whatever," like he and to be able to get status and get be able to get a woman that will be there for you and be reliable for you. And I can't say he's wrong, like because there's a lot of the way the modern structure works. I mean, you can find there. You have to find a diamond in the rough, right? You're finding a needle in the haystack. You're searching through it, trying to figure out if there is someone out there who will be that sort of traditional female figure that you want them to be. But that just doesn't always exist anymore. I mean, a lot of women work nowadays, which is not necessarily like anything hugely against that. It does prove that like if you have two parents working in the household, that and especially if they stay married, then it does tend to yield better results for the children. Right now, I do think that it would probably be better for women to be able to be just stay home and not have to work, but this is the world we live in. I mean, we can't control what the Federal Reserve does, what our currency has done had done to it. But you know, it goes back to this sort of thing of like blame men for all of men's problems. Regardless of the circumstance, regardless of what goes on, and to some degree, men should accept responsibility, and that's where like some of this is like especially like what Andrew Tate says is good. If men start to think like, okay, if it if it rains, it's my fault, and then that's a silly way to think about it, but it does bring like a level of accountability on yourself. Then as long as you're doing what you need to do, then um then you can kind of deal with the world around you, and you don't have this expectation that the world is going to be uh, compatible toward you. Like you're assuming the world is going to hate you, and if you assume the world is going to hate you, then a lot more positive results can be attained. Then you can actually go forward. You can conquer. You can be able to battle. You can do these things as long as you know the world is out to get you. You can actually fight. I think that the problem is that a lot of these men don't think the world is out to get them, or they do, but they think that it's because it's all women's fault. I think that's and I don't think it's all women's fault. And I don't think it's all men's fault. I think there's a lot of like shared responsibility there. But the idea that like, oh, men should just go get married and have like men can just go coerce a woman into marrying them and then coerce them into having a family. There's a lot of levels of of like coercion that would have to happen. You'd basically have to do some very illegal things to be able to do that kind of like you'd have to behave very erratic and not in the way that people perceive how you would behave in modern era. So like it's just an unfortunate truth that a lot of these men need this kind of message. They need this kind of they don't need to hear like, hey, get married and have families. What they need to hear is, hey, get status to where you can be well enough, where where you can look good enough to be able to then then you can pursue dating and all this stuff. And that's the message that men need to hear nowadays. Just because that's what they're competing against. You're competing against the Omega Giga Chad who always all he does is lift at the gym, and that's become his job. He actually gets paid for it now. Oh, I lift, bro. I lift, bro. Yeah, yeah, bro. I lift. And then that's what you got to compete against is like a modern man. So like if you got to compete against that kind of stuff, you're gonna have to get have some take care of your appearance and gain some status and gain some money to be able to compete in that environment. Now, obviously, preferably you find someone who doesn't have all these crazy insane requirements, and that you can actually talk to and be able to approach and these kind of things. But it's going to be increasingly rare in a modern setting, and that's what these men need to know is like go into the game knowing that you can lose at any moment, and if you go in the game lose knowing you can lose at any moment, then you don't play safe. You play it safe. You don't play it risky. Like you don't try to risk anything. You don't take any chances. You play the slow game. You play the methodical game. You build up wealth, status, and appear. Improve your physical appearance, and then you can actually be able to compete. And that's the positive part of the message of like the manosphere. Now, obviously, there's a problem of like promiscuity, like the fact that they encourage promiscuity and they encourage basically like, hey, you don't need to get married and you don't need to have a family, or you do need to have a family, but you don't need to get married. A lot of the manosphere types, but I think that you know the encouragement of men to get in a position to where they can be able to win the dating market then leads them to being able to get married and have a family. I think that's going to be much more likely if they have that money and they have their physical appearance in order to be able to compete and be able to have a family in that way. That's just how I think it is. I think that's how I think it's just going to be because you can't really fight. Like you can't fight with the modern era and just say men go get married and have a family and men are responsible for everything. I think that there's much more depth, and I think that you have to be able to address it in a meaningful way. And most modern especially conservative figures, like they don't know how to navigate this, and that basically they just revert to telling men to do the same thing that they've always done. Oh well, just go to approach a woman, get married, and it's not going to work 100% of the time. I do think that men should, at some point attempt this, but I do think that they need to take the advice of the sort of the manosphere and be able to like build your money up and build your physical appearance in order. And because if you approach a woman and you're a fat slob, you're not going to get the woman. Even if you are fat and then you approach you clean up your appearance, you dress nice, but then you approach a woman that's not attainable for you. A lot of it's expectations too. If you think that you're going to get a 10 or you think you're going to get a 9 or an 8, sometimes maybe you need to lower your expectations a little bit, and then that's like that's the unfortunate truth. Like you can do that, or you can just attain the money and the status and build your physical appearance, and then it doesn't matter whether that's why I think what their message is. That's what I think the positive part of their message is. If you do that, then you don't have to worry about all these other external things. Like you don't have to worry about like, okay, am I you don't have to calculate, okay, should I approach a 7 or should I approach an 8? Should I approach a 6 or should I try to like lower it all the way down to like like a 1, which is like just really a lot of times like underselling yourself. Um, that's sort of the crux of the problem is that the conservative like figures like Josh Hawley are telling these men like, hey, conservative hard enough and approach women, and then all of a sudden you'll just get married and you'll have kids, things will just work out. I don't think that that's going to work in the modern setting, and you're going to need something like what the manosphere is saying, but not the promiscuity and the lack of other responsibility like with children and all these other things. You need like a true like manhood like figure for manhood. Like if you need someone who is actually a sort of a father figure, like a present father figure for people who don't have present father figures, and that's where I think that why I think I resonate with some of the message, and I think that they have good points about a lot of the perspective of it. Because if you don't have your finance in order, if you don't have your appearance in order, no one's gonna want you, no one's gonna care, and that's just the unfortunate truth. So, with that being said, we do need to find a positive message, and it's especially if there is someone who can deliver such a positive message, with going forward, that it basically can can help these manosphere types, but not have the sort of like flashiness and the promiscuity that they encourage. Um, that's what I think about it. But let me know your thoughts on this down below. This should be premiering. Actually, this should be premiering right after the 2-Bit podcast. Please, if you haven't watched the 2-Bit podcast, I'll link their show in the description. Also, we should have had the Dissident Roundtable on the Manosphere. So if you want to hear more about that and talk more about the Manosphere, go check that video out. Like if you want to see all that discussion, go check that out. And I'll hopefully have links in the description for that as well. But that's all I have for this video. Check all. Please like if you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel. Also, I have links in the description for everything that you want to check out. Everything that I do. Um, Check that out. And I hope you have a great day. And this is Trey from Trey's Think Tank. Signing out.